The red warning lights flashed across the bridge of the Allied command ship Star Watcher. Admiral James stood at the main viewport, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the distant flashes of weapons fire. Each burst of light meant more of his ships were dying. The Empire's fleet had pushed through their outer defenses like they were made of paper. The blue-skinned officer at the sensor station cleared his throat. "Admiral, we've lost contact with Defense Line 7. The Empire's dreadnoughts are moving forward." His voice shook slightly. They all knew what that meant. Their last strong point was gone. Admiral James nodded slowly, feeling the weight of command on his shoulders. 5 years of fighting, and now it would end here. The Allied species had joined forces to stop the Empire's expansion, but it hadn't been enough. Their technology was good, their soldiers were brave, but the Empire simply had more of everything. "Sir," his second-in-command spoke up, "we should order the retreat while we still can. Save what ships we have left." Around the bridge, other alien officers nodded in agreement. They came from a dozen different worlds, each with their own way of fighting, but they all recognized defeat when they saw it. James walked to the tactical display, studying the red dots that marked enemy ships. They were moving into their favorite attack pattern, a tight arrow formation that could punch through any defense. The Empire never changed their tactics because they never needed to. Why change what works? 10 minutes until they're in range, someone reported. James opened his mouth to give the retreat order. There was no shame in living to fight another day. But then the sensor officer jumped up from his station. "Admiral, new contact." His long fingers flew across his console. "Something just appeared at the edge of our scanner range. It's moving fast. Faster than anything I've ever seen." The tactical display updated, showing a single green dot racing across space. The officer kept talking, his voice getting higher with each word. "Energy readings are off the scale. The mass signature doesn't make sense. It's changing as I watch. This can't be right." James felt his heart skip a beat. "Show me the ship classification," he ordered, even though he already knew what he would see. There was only one species in the galaxy that built ships that could move like that could bend physics until it broke. The classification flashed on the screen. Human Warship. The bridge erupted in whispers. Some officers stepped back from the display like it might bite them. Others leaned forward, hope lighting up their faces. Everyone had heard stories about human ships, about how they fought. But humans rarely got involved in conflicts outside their own space. They were traders, explorers, but they kept to themselves in military matters. Until now. The sensor officer's voice was barely a whisper. "Sir, the Empire's fleet. They're changing formation, breaking up their attack pattern. They see it too." James allowed himself a small smile. Of course, the Empire was scrambling. They had built their entire strategy around overwhelming force, crushing enemies with superior numbers. But humans didn't play by those rules. One human ship could rewrite the laws of battle. "Send to all ships," James ordered, his voice steady and clear. "Hold position. Help is coming." He turned to look at his crew, seeing the mix of fear and hope on their faces. "We're about to see something that will be remembered for generations." The distant flashes of battle had stopped. For a moment, space itself seemed to hold its breath. Then the sensor officer spoke one last time, his words carrying across the silent bridge. "Energy spike from the human ship. They're powering up their main drive. Whatever they're about to do, it's big." James looked back at the tactical display, watching that single green dot as it raced toward them, toward the massive Empire fleet that had seemed unstoppable just minutes ago. He almost felt sorry for the Empire. Almost. After all, they were about to learn what every spacefaring race eventually learned. Never make humanity come to the battlefield. Because when humans fight, they don't just change the battle. They change the rules. The Empire's fleet hung in space like a swarm of angry wasps, their formation broken but still dangerous. As the human warship approached, Admiral James remembered the first time he had learned about humanity's reputation in warfare. It had been 20 years ago, when he was just a junior officer. His teacher, an old veteran named Marcus, had shown their class a recording of the Battle of Broken Stars, 3 human ships against a pirate fleet of 30. The pirates had laughed at the humans' demands to surrender. They had stopped laughing when the human ships started moving in ways that damaged the fabric of space itself. The memory played in his mind as clear as yesterday. The human ships had seemed to dance between laser fire, using gravity itself as a weapon. They bent space around themselves, creating paths where none should exist. The pirates' shots missed again and again, while every human attack found its mark. The battle ended in minutes, not hours. "Pay attention," Marcus had told them. "Humans look soft. They come from a world with less gravity than most. Their bones break easily. Their skin tears. They live shorter lives than nearly every spacefaring race. But they understand something that we don't. The rules of the universe are more like guidelines to them." On his bridge, James watched the tactical display as more data about the incoming human ship arrived. The Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had pushed so hard into Allied space that they had left the trade routes to Earth exposed. They probably thought humans wouldn't care about a war that didn't directly affect them. But humans had signed trade agreements with the Allied species, simple pieces of paper with words and promises. To most races, such agreements were just political tools, to be broken when convenience demanded. Humans, though, humans treated their promises like unbreakable bonds. The sensor officer's voice broke through James's thoughts. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy patterns from the human ship. I don't know what they're doing, but it's affecting our sensors in a 10 light-minute radius." Of course they were. Humans had developed technology that other races had dismissed as impossible. While the Empire relied on brute force and numbers, humans had looked at the laws of physics as puzzles to be solved. They built ships that could twist gravity, engines that bent time, and weapons that turned space itself into a battlefield. More reports came in. The Empire's ships were trying to regroup, but their formations were sluggish, uncertain. They had trained to fight enemies who thought like them, who followed the same basic rules of space combat. But humans wrote their own rules. "Message from the human ship," the communications officer announced. "Text only. It reads, 'Stand firm, Allied Command. We'll handle this.'" The officer paused, then added, "They've identified themselves as the Thunderchild." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. Even the Empire's ships seemed to hesitate at the name. The Thunderchild, the ship that had ended the Mars Rebellion by creating a temporary black hole. The ship that had scattered the pirate lords by flying through a sun. The ship that had never lost a battle. James looked at his crew, seeing the mix of awe and fear on their faces. The Empire had pushed too far, threatened too much, and now they would learn why humans were both the most sought-after allies and the most feared enemies in known space. The humans had a saying that many races had dismissed as simple bravado. The best way to win a fight is to change the rules. The Empire was about to learn that humans didn't just say things. They proved them. The Thunderchild dropped out of faster-than-light travel like a stone breaking the surface of a pond. Ripples of distorted space spread out from its arrival point, making the stars behind it dance and shimmer. The ship looked nothing like the blocky warships of the Empire or the smooth designs of the Allied species. Its hull was a series of impossible angles and curves, built to bend rather than block enemy fire. Inside the Thunderchild's bridge, Captain Thomas Reed watched his tactical display with calm eyes. Most alien species packed their bridges with dozens of crew members, each handling a specific task. The Thunderchild's bridge held only 5 humans. Artificial intelligence handled most of the ship's systems, another thing that made other species nervous. "Status report," Reed ordered, his voice steady. The Empire's fleet filled his view screen, nearly 300 ships against his one. The odds made him smile. Humans had long ago learned that numbers meant little in space combat. All systems green, his second-in-command reported. The AI cores are running at full capacity. Shield harmonics are stable. The new drive is purring like a kitten. The crew spoke with the casual confidence that came from years of impossible victories. Reed opened a channel to the Allied command ship. Admiral James's face appeared on the screen, his alien features tight with both hope and worry. Captain Reed, your arrival is unexpected. You could say the same about the Empire's push toward Earth's trade routes, Reed replied. He gestured at his tactical officer, who began transmitting data to the Allied fleet. We've been watching them for weeks. They thought they were being clever, drawing your forces away from our shipping lanes. Instead, they gave us a reason to get involved. The Allied admiral studied the data, his eyes widening. These readings, your ship's capabilities are beyond anything we've seen before, but even for a human vessel, to take on such numbers. Reed's smile grew wider. Numbers are just numbers, Admiral. The Empire thinks war is about having more ships, more soldiers, more guns. Humans know better. War is about changing the rules until your enemy's advantages become weaknesses. On his screen, Reed could see the Empire's ships still trying to reform their lines. Their tight formations had always been their strength, allowing them to concentrate fire and overwhelm any defense. But against what the Thunderchild carried, those same formations would become a death trap. We've brought something new to this fight, Reed continued. Something we've been developing ever since we learned about the Empire's expansion. They think they understand space warfare because they've won a few hundred battles using the same tactics over and over. We're about to show them what happens when you push humanity into a corner. The Thunderchild's engines began to power up, humming with energy that made reality itself shiver. Across the ship, AI systems calculated firing solutions that ignored conventional physics. The crew strapped into their stations, ready for the kind of maneuvers that would turn most alien species to paste. Admiral, Reed said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of human warfare, I suggest you have your fleet pull back to a safe distance. What we're about to do here, well, let's just say it's going to rewrite a few laws of physics. The Empire's fleet began to move, their ships spreading out as they finally recognized the threat. But it was too late. The Thunderchild had already begun its attack run, its hull gleaming with energy that shouldn't exist in normal space. Human ingenuity was about to meet Empire arrogance, and only one would survive. The holographic display in the Allied command ship's war room showed the Thunderchild as a small green dot against the vast red mass of the Empire's fleet. Captain Reed's image floated above the display, his calm expression a stark contrast to the tension filling the room. The alien commanders had gathered to hear the humans' plan, though many of them looked like they would rather be anywhere else. What I'm about to show you, Reed said, manipulating controls on his end of the transmission, is why the Empire made their biggest mistake when they threatened Earth's trade routes. The display changed, showing complex patterns of energy and gravity that made several alien officers step back in confusion. Admiral James leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he studied the patterns. These energy signatures, they're impossible. You're talking about bending space-time itself. His voice carried both awe and fear. Even the most advanced allied species had only theorized about such technologies. Reed nodded. Humans have always looked at the impossible and seen opportunity. When we first reached space, everyone told us our ships were too small, our weapons too weak, our bodies too fragile. So we stopped trying to match other species' strengths. Instead, we found ways to change the rules of combat itself. The hologram shifted again, showing the Thunderchild's planned attack route. It would dive straight into the heart of the Empire's fleet, a move so suicidal that several alien commanders burst out in protest. Reed waited patiently for them to finish before continuing. The Thunderchild carries a prototype weapon we call the Mass Magnifier, he explained. It doesn't just bend space-time, it rewrites local physics. When we activate it, Anything caught in its field experiences a temporary but massive increase in gravitational mass. He paused, letting the implications sink in. The tighter the Empire's ships pack together, the more devastating the effect will be. One of the alien commanders, his scaled skin pale with worry, spoke up. But to get within range, you would have to fly through their entire defense screen. Their weapons would tear your ship apart before you could activate this device. Reed's smile grew wider. That's where the second part of our plan comes in. The mass magnifier isn't just a weapon, it's also our shield. By creating localized gravity wells around the Thunderchild, we can bend incoming fire away from our hull. The closer we get to their fleet, the stronger our defense becomes. The hologram updated one final time, showing simulated results of the attack. The mathematics involved made several alien officers clutch their heads in pain. Humans had always thought differently about physics, treating the laws of the universe more like suggestions than rules. "This is madness," another commander protested. "Even if it works, you'll be trapped in the middle of their fleet. No ship can survive those odds." "Survival isn't just about staying alive," Reed countered. "It's about making sure your enemy can't continue the fight. The Empire needs to learn that threatening human interests has consequences, severe ones." His voice carried the weight of Earth's entire military history, a history of smaller forces defeating larger ones through innovation and unconventional thinking. Admiral James studied the plan one more time, seeing in it the same brilliant insanity that had made humans such feared warriors. They never fought the way you expected. They never gave up, never accepted impossible odds. Instead, they found ways to change those odds, to turn the very laws of physics against their enemies. The Thunderchild moved like nothing the Empire had ever seen before. As it accelerated toward their fleet, space itself seemed to bend and twist around its hull. The Empire's first volley of laser fire curved away from the human ship, deflected by invisible waves of gravitational force. Their second volley met the same fate, twisting off into the void as the Thunderchild's defenses warped the fabric of space-time. Captain Reed felt the deep vibration of the ship's experimental drive through the soles of his boots. His crew worked with practiced efficiency, their movements smooth despite the impossible forces swirling around their vessel. The ship's AI cores processed billions of calculations per second, adjusting their gravitational shields to match each new attack pattern. The Empire's fleet commanders weren't fools. They recognized the threat now, ordering their ships to spread out, trying to deny the Thunderchild a concentrated target. But Reed had expected this. "Launch the gravity anchors," he ordered, his voice steady as a mountain. Dozens of small objects shot out from the Thunderchild's launch tubes. The Empire's gunners ignored them at first. They were too small to be traditional weapons. This was their second mistake. The objects activated simultaneously, each one creating its own localized gravity well. The Empire's ships found themselves being pulled back together by forces they couldn't fight. Multiple missile launches detected, Reed's tactical officer reported. "They're throwing everything they have at us." The Empire's desperation was showing. Thousands of missiles streaked across space, their drives burning bright enough to rival stars. Reed allowed himself a small smile. "Activate point defense mode." The Thunderchild's surface rippled as hundreds of small ports opened. What emerged wasn't traditional defensive weapons, but rather thousands of tiny gravity projectors. Each one caught incoming missiles and sent them spinning off course, their warheads detonating harmlessly in space. The Thunderchild's charge continued, its path through space resembling a stone skipping across water. Each skip was actually the ship creating and riding its own gravitational waves, using the Empire's own weapons fire as energy sources to power its defensive systems. Physics itself became the human ship's greatest weapon. "We're entering optimal range," the tactical officer announced. On the main screen, the Empire's ships loomed larger, their formations now hopelessly tangled by the gravity anchors. Some of their captains had realized the danger and were trying to break free, but the physics involved worked against them. The more energy they used to escape, the stronger the gravitational bonds became. Reed felt the change in the ship's vibration as the mass magnifier powered up. Years of research, countless experiments, and humanity's unique understanding of space-time manipulation had led to this moment. The Empire was about to learn why threatening human interests was a fatal mistake. "All hands, brace for mass shift," Reed ordered. The Thunderchild's hull began to glow with energies that shouldn't exist in normal space. Around them, reality itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when human ingenuity would once again rewrite the rules of warfare. At the heart of the Empire's fleet, reality began to break. The Thunderchild's mass magnifier activated with a pulse of energy that made space itself shudder. For a single heartbeat, everything seemed perfectly still. Then the laws of physics rewrote themselves in a sphere 5,000 kilometers wide. The Empire's ships suddenly found their mass multiplied by a factor of thousands. Steel hulls groaned under their own impossible weight. Engines designed to move vessels weighing thousands of tons now struggled against ships that weighed millions. The tight formation that had been their strength became their greatest weakness as ships began to pull on each other with gravitational forces that rivaled small stars. From the Thunderchild's bridge, Captain Reed watched the destruction unfold. The human ship floated in the eye of the storm it had created, protected by layers of carefully calculated gravitational fields. Around them, Empire ships crashed into each other, their own mass turning them into weapons. Some tried to fire their engines at maximum power to escape, but this only made things worse. The extra energy fed back into the mass magnifier, making the effect even stronger. "Energy readings are off the scale," Reed's science officer reported, her voice filled with professional fascination rather than fear. "The gravitational cascade is exceeding our projections by 300%. The Empire's ships are actually helping power the effect." Through the main viewport, Reed could see the Empire's mighty dreadnoughts twisting like leaves in a hurricane. Their proud warships, built to dominate through size and power, were being destroyed by those very qualities. The mass magnifier turned their greatest strengths into weaknesses, their massive engines and thick armor working against them as their enhanced mass tore their fleet apart. From the Allied command ship, Admiral James and his officers watched in stunned silence. The Empire's fleet, which had seemed unstoppable just minutes ago, was being destroyed not by traditional weapons, but by humanity's understanding of physics itself. The Thunderchild hadn't just changed the rules of the battle, it had changed the fundamental laws that governed how ships could exist in space. Some Empire ships managed to break free of the effect's edge, their crews desperate to escape. But even these lucky few had been changed by what they'd witnessed. They'd seen what happened when humans were pushed too far, when humanity's creative approach to warfare was unleashed at full force. The stories they would tell would ensure that no one would threaten Earth's interests again without remembering this moment. The mass magnifier's effect began to fade, its work complete. Where the Empire's proud fleet had been, now drifted a field of twisted metal and broken ships. The Thunderchild emerged from the chaos unchanged, its hull still glowing with energies that defied conventional understanding. Captain Reed looked at the destruction around him not with triumph, but with quiet satisfaction. The Empire had needed to learn this lesson, and humans had always been excellent teachers. The battlefield had gone quiet. Debris from the Empire's fleet drifted through space like a newborn asteroid field, a monument to what happens when humanity is forced to demonstrate its full capabilities. The Thunderchild floated among the wreckage, its hull still shimming with residual energy from the mass magnifier. The remaining Empire ships had fled, carrying with them a message that would spread across the galaxy. Never underestimate human ingenuity. Admiral James stood on his bridge, watching as rescue ships moved through the debris field, picking up escape pods from the destroyed Empire vessels. The humans had insisted on saving as many survivors as possible. It was another thing that confused many alien species about humanity: their ability to show mercy immediately after demonstrating such devastating power. Captain Reed's image appeared on the main screen of the Allied command ship. "Admiral, we've done a full scan of the sector. No more Empire ships within range. They're running back to their own space at full speed." His voice carried no triumph, just quiet satisfaction at a job well done. The alien officers on the bridge looked at the human captain with new eyes. They had all heard stories about human warfare, about their strange technologies and unconventional tactics, but seeing it firsthand had changed something in them. The Empire had lost more than ships today. They had lost the myth of their invincibility. "The trade routes to Earth will be safe now," Reed continued. "But if you'd like, we can stay in the sector for a while. Help you set up some defenses. The Empire won't try anything soon, but it's better to be prepared." The offer was delivered casually, as if lending a warship that could rewrite physics was no different from lending a cup of sugar to a neighbor. Admiral James nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind the offer. Humanity wasn't just offering military support. They were offering to share knowledge. Not all of it, of course. The secrets of the mass magnifier would remain Earth's alone. But there were other technologies, other approaches to space combat that could help the Allied species protect themselves. As repair ships began their work and medical teams treated the survivors, James thought about how quickly everything had changed. Just hours ago, the Empire had seemed unstoppable. Their mighty fleet had pushed through every defense, ignored every plea for peace. They had thought their superior numbers and conventional weapons made them invincible. But they had forgotten the most important rule of the galaxy: never force humans to solve a problem. Because humans didn't just solve problems, they revolutionized the very nature of the solution. The Empire had brought numbers to the battle. Humans had brought innovation, creativity, and a willingness to bend reality itself. The Thunder Child's presence in the sector would change more than just military tactics. It would change how species thought about warfare itself. The old ways of mighty fleets and overwhelming force were over. The future belonged to those who could think differently, who could see past the obvious solutions to find new ways of approaching old problems. As James watched the human ship begin its patrol of the sector, he realized that the galaxy's balance of power hadn't just shifted, it had been fundamentally transformed. And at the heart of that transformation was humanity's greatest weapon. Not their technology, not their ships, but their endless capacity to look at the impossible and say, "We can find a way."